So, hi everybody and welcome back. This is a C++ tutorial series for absolute beginners. This is video 85 and in this video we are talking about functions again, but special about the round brackets of the function. So, let's get started. First of all, we create a function and we create and repeat how to create a function definition, and I'm choosing a function with a return type and I want add two numbers. And let's get started. First of all, we have to choose again the return type. In my case, it's a float this time. And I add two numbers. So I say add two numbers. And of course, we have now this round brackets, which we are going to talk in a moment. But let's finish our function definition first. So let's continue. And we know a function with a return type needs also the keyword return. And the value after return must match with the value of the return type. So I need something here that is a float. But before I can use this, I want to create a variable, which I'm going to return here. And this variable must be float. Let's create a float variable, float. And the variable name is, in my case, of course, must be something useful. It says here add two numbers. So after I added two numbers, my return value should be the result of these two numbers. So let's make a result. Let's call it add result. Because there are many possible ways to calculate numbers. For example, multiplicating and so on. In this case, is just adding. Good. And add result. And let's write also a default value, which is just 0 at start. So now I use this add result, of course, as my return value. And now we are almost finished. Let's write here also fast function definition. And what we learned is if we are calling this function definition, let's call this. We need to call this one. We need just a function name with this round brackets, very important. Here, and let's call it here in my int main, in my start point. Let's call this function call here fast again. All right, and now we learned if the function call is before the function definition, we need a forward declaration. And how we use a forward declaration is just actually a normal declaration which comes before the call. So in my case, I put it here on top. And now I have on top a forward declaration. Let's write here. It is a declaration, but because, yeah, let's call it forward declaration. But keep in mind, it is just a declaration, and in this case a special declaration because it makes also visible this one. So that was a fast repeat about a function with a return type. So we can now change a little bit this one and see why we need this round brackets. Right now we use this. We never used this round brackets. It was all time empty. And you see, we don't have to use this round brackets all times, but there are cases where we have that, and now we will change this. For example, here I created this add two numbers. Now what I can do, just normal, to add two numbers, I could here write two float numbers, right? Let's write it, float, and my first number, and let's say 3. All right, and here float my second number, and let's write here 5. And now I can add them very easy. So result, oops, I have here this result, which means I have to go after it. After this one, I calculate them. Let's calculate them. At result is assignment my first number plus my second number. Yeah, we are good, and this will probably work anyhow. of course, there is one more mistake, not a mistake. What I said is when we write a function with a return type, we need, of course, use this. And here I just called it, so it will return a result, and it will be not used at this point. Okay, let's make a fast use case as well. And the easiest one is probably just call it, let's print it out. Okay, std, say out. And remember, we can call this one even here below. Let's do this one. Copy. That's also possible. And call it below. And this one, we can even uncomment it. So let's deactivate this code by uncommenting it. All right. And now this should work, right? Let's test it. Let's see. And indeed, it is working. We have our 8. All worked as expected. This was what we learned. And now comes the problem. What we see here is a function call from here. And there will be many cases where you have not the 2 variables available at this point where the function is where the function definition is. So what I mean with that, these 2 variables are not generated, for example, at this time, at this point of time. So that means if they are not generated, we can't use these variables here right now. So let's shift them away. I put them now here on top and say, they are generated in my int main function, for example, here. The problem is I won't use them here at this point. So, and now this round brackets come to place, which means I can't use them here, nor also, if this example is a little bit bad, of course, you see, why not just put them here back? But sometimes there are reasons, for example, they are generated dependent on other conditions, and they can only generate it here in int main. Think about that. Okay, let's continue. So we know we can't put them here in our function. That means we find now a way, or we have to find a way to send these variables with this function call to this function definition. And the way is we use this round brackets. And how we are going to do this, we start not here. That's very important. We are not starting here. This is the function call. This is still a function call in our std. We are starting in the function definition. Why we are starting here in the function definition? Because the function definition is actually, it defines the function, what the function should do. And here must all the code what is important to do the function. So we start here. Okay, I know I need 2 variables. So I need these 2 variables. So we add these 2 variables actually here in this round bracket. So let's do this. I need 2 float variables. That's very important too. What variables you need? Float, because I want add 2 numbers in this case. Okay, let's write float. And then our first number, comma, I need 1 more, so it's not 1, I need 2, that's why a comma, and 1 more, float, second number. All right, and we are almost finished. So this one is just called a declaration again. So this is a new declaration, careful. Why is this a new declaration? Because I write here the type in front. So, and this one you do all time in the definition. So if the compiler reads later this definition, it knows this function asks for a float, this function asks again for a float, and I can send him 2 float. So let's jump back to our caller. Now I can call this function here, but of course I must use here the call. And important here is when you call that, you have to provide this 2 information. So you said this function has two variables in this round brackets, you must provide at the start. We will later see that you have not all time provide this, but at start, let's say you have to provide this two information. So I did this, but anything went wrong, right? And the point is, at this point, you are not declaring new variables. You are providing variables. That's why you can't write here float. So here you are not declaring variables, you are just using variables to send. And here you have created these variables, declared these variables. Then the second important point is they are normally local, this variable declaration, which means they exist only at this point here. So from this start to this end, and then this declaration is gone. But you should not use the same name, even if it's possible. And the reason for that is name conflicts, irritations, and so on. So let's change this name a little bit. And I call this first number to add. So it's just a little bit to change. And then second number to add. So now I have even more red cribbles, which is not very good. And then we can check what errors we have. Before we check these errors, let's check these errors here. And we see here, it says here, my first number, why you are gone when I'm here. So it says here, my first number, it must match to this variable name here, because this one you won't use. So let's make this one here first number, and you see now this one here is matching this one. It is highlighted. They are connected. This is the send thing, and this second thing must match this one as well. Now you see the second one is matching this one, and we have only a problem with the sender, right? So what is the problem here? Let's compile and see what they are complaining. And they saying something like identifier, and we know what the identifier is, name, right? And it says here is undefined. What is the problem? Yes, I hope you see it. Because we changed this one here and we changed this one here, that's all fine. That's perfect. So at this point, there is no problem. But the problem is this one needs, of course, forward declared as well at this point, because I changed the function here. So this one is another function than this one now. So we have just copied this forward declaration. So the declaration was here. I copied just here this one on top. Now the forward declaration works. And now let's see. We have now a forward declaration. But let's see what happens with these strange numbers here. And we have still a problem. And it says is undefined, is undefined. So what is the problem? And here says second number, undeclared information, and so. Okay, what is the problem? How we can solve it? I said we have the definition here. That's fine. We have a forward declaration here. That's fine. And they say this one is still undefined. The thing is, this variables was provided, and the place where they was provided is, let's say, from this int main. So I have declared this function, this variables here. That's the important part. So instead of my first number, for example, I want to use this one, right? And here we have a declaration. I use this one. This one is not declared right now. And that I mean at the, at start, this one here is own declaration, and this variables need, let's say here, my first number here, and here my second number. My second number, and the declaration for these variables are given here at this point where you call them, right? Where you call this function. So don't get irritated about this one. This is a declaration. This one is a variable use, not a declaration. So I hope you get it, but we are almost finished with that one. So let's test this one more time and see how many errors we have. And we have no errors. That is good. So we learned what we learned now. We learned actually a function needs it's the same like all the thing what we learned in the last videos. A function, this is a function with a return type, and it has also a forward declaration if we call it after our call. But the important thing is, if we can't create variables here in this block, which is in the function, so which means there are reasons we can't use variables here, then we have to send these variables. And the way to send this is create a function definition, like so that it says, okay, I expect here two variables. You might, and later we will learn some more complicated things here. Not complicated, a little bit variations. And sometimes you have not even provide all and so, but right now think about that. If you see here, that's very important too. One more very important thing. So because it's just naming, you have to remember a naming, which is very important, and beginner are irritated a little bit, but just remember it now. Try to memorize this. So function definition, right? When we declare these variables, and these declarations are called, when we talk about functions, let's see, what are they? That's good, no joking. So it's more like we have here parameters, right? They are called function parameters here. And why they are called here function parameters? The reason for that is they are receiving, let's say, yeah, they are receiving variable information. Important is when they are talking from the caller perspective, which is this one, they are saying these are not function parameters, these are function arguments. And why they are calling this function arguments? Because this is not a declaration. They have actually values, at least they assume they will have values assigned to them, and this values comes from here. And you see the thing, parameters and arguments are actually the same thing. The only difference is these are sent and not declared, and this is the same variable here received from this point here. And yeah, and to make it easy, just think they are the same thing. But when you read it on books or on literature or wherever, whatever book you read, they talk about function arguments. If you use values for this one, for example, instead of first number, you can use here just directly this number as well, but you should not, because we learned we should use variables. It's yeah, it's the way to go. And one more time, this is function parameters most time, which is in the definition. And read this kind of stuff in online books as well, because yeah, it is very easy a little bit to get confused, even if it's so easy. All right, that said, I think we will make, of course, more examples in future how to use that, because there are much more to talk about this round brackets and so on. But for now, I think that's enough. And if you have any questions, any complaints, ask again in the comments, and train this, because functions are very, very important, very powerful. But you also see it is not the simple way like we did in int main. For example, in int main, we just started from top, we went to down, and we was finished. Right now, you see we starting here a new function, and this function is dependent of, for example, on this variables, which is created here. And that's, I said, it's a little bit not difficult, a little bit more complicated. That's why I said we need to train our skills to track variables. This is the thing which we will go in the future to train to track these variables. We will jump here. And of course, one more info, to find this function here, use a right click on it and then go to definition. That would be this place here actually. So this is our function definition here. And this one you should do from a call place. For example, this one here is our int main. I call it at this place, and then you are interested actually how they define this function. For example, if I just see this one, let me see this one here. If you just see this one, okay, you see here is a function call, but okay, what is this function doing? At this point here, you can't see. Then you can right click it. Peak definition is just it shows, so you can watch it and then deactivate it, or just go to definition, right click, go to definition, and then check out what it does. Okay, they are taking the first number, they are taking the second number, and then they are adding these numbers, and then it returns this one. So this is very important that you do this as well. So use this, go to definition and go to declaration. So for example, declaration is this too, because this is a forward declaration, and this one is actually a function call, but yeah, they highlighted both more or less because they are similar to our declaration. And yeah, and this kind of stuff very important, because later, like I said, when we have here 1,000 lines of code, and let me make this one, and this is anywhere down the road, and here are many other functions, it's hard to find. And the easiest way is, I think, just right click, go to definition, and you will start to learn to jump a lot. Oops, not this one. You will learn to, yeah, this tracking, this jumping. Yes, we are starting now with this one. Very important, not difficult. It is just hopping down, top, and so on. Okay, I hope I talk too much, I think, but I hope you will train this. We will train this, and we will combine this, of course, with all the things which we learned so far. And I talk a little bit more about function, and then we will do again an exercise anyway. So with that said, if you have any complaints, any questions, ask in the comments, and good luck. Bye.